Psychology of Adolescence was a class about adolescents, their development, their cognitive and physiological development, their problems that they face, and how I can help them to overcome those difficulties to become a valued member in today's society. The first chapter was the overview. It talked about the historical perspective of adolescents, and today adolescents mentioned that even though they're centuries apart, the adolescents are still the same, they're still rebel, and it's their nature of development. The next chapter talked about puberty, different stages of puberty, how different factors contribute to adolescence development, such as evolution, heredity, and environmental factors. Chapter 3 talked about brain development and cognitive developmental views. It talked about Fidget's theory versus Vygotsky theory. It talked about multiple intelligences and social cognition. It talked about that at this age, adolescents seeking risky behavior due to the specifics of their brain. One part of their brain is being underdeveloped, the one that's responsible for controlling their impulses, and the one that is controlling the risky behavior is starting to develop, so they are having that gap of a couple of years that the adolescents cannot control their impulses. The next chapter talks about development of self in adolescence, emotional development, personality development, and then we also talked about gender, biological, social, and cognitive influences on gender, what are the gender stereotypes, gender roles, and developmental changes in gender, what are the gender, how it's changing in today's society, how, like, the example would be that it used to be the moms always, the women stay home, being mom, and guys working. Today you can see a lot of women working in the military, and some guys decide to just be stay-at-home dads. Then the next chapter talked about sexuality and the sexual attitude and behavior, problematic sexual outcomes such as pregnancies and sexual transmitted diseases. Also talked about sexual literacy and how we should educate adolescents about being safe. And then next chapter we talked about moral development and the effects of parenting and schools on moral development. We talked about the roles of values in religion and spirituality. And then a big part we talked about the families and adolescents' parent relationship, effects of parenting styles and dynamics on adolescents' development, the siblings' relationship, and families in modern society. Talked about how families are changing, about two-mom families or divorced families. Then the next chapter talked about the rules of peer relations and friendships, adolescent groups such as sport teams or Boy Scout, Girl Scouts. And then the same chapter talked about dating and romantic relationship and diversity of emerging adult lifestyles. And then we also talked about different schools and different approaches to educating students. And the chapter talked about transitions of schooling, like what students have to overcome when they transition from elementary to middle school and then to high school, and then social context of schooling, and then there was a part about sexual adolescence, such as students with disability and so on. Then there was a chapter about achievement and work and career development and what choices that make adolescents make one choice over another. And then there was a chapter on the culture and the socioeconomics and ethnicity and immigration and the media influences, how much time, screen time students should have per day, and talked about that the American students spend the most amount of time watching television, being on the screens. And the last chapter talked about problems in adolescence, different problems and disorders such as drug use, depression and suicide, and interrelation of problems and the ways to prevent them. What can we do to help those kids who need us the most? I really enjoyed this class, and I